All right, hello and welcome back to Pass the Torch Legacies in Jewelry. My name is Naja Dessa Van Diest, and I have the honor of being your host today. On the podcast, we have Kindred Lubeck, who is the founder and creative force behind Artifex Fine Jewelry. I love her work. She is just a really phenomenal hand engraver who has really found her own niche and marketed herself so beautifully. And so this is a really fun one for me because, she's close to me in age. She kind of is like the same demographic as me. And so I really enjoy, talking with her. This is a really fun one. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment. I see everything. I see every subscriber. It just helps me keep this project alive if you love it. And then I will preface that I am also a little bit sick during this recording. If you hear that in my voice, know that I am not at full capacity, but I'm still going to be giving it my all today. Here's our conversation. Kindred Lubeck, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. You are the owner, founder, and creative force behind Artifex Fine Jewelry. Can you share a little bit about how you even got started into making jewelry?
Yeah. So my dad's a goldsmith. He's been a goldsmith since he was 18. He's now 70, so for a really long time. And following in his footsteps was not something that he encouraged me to do or my mom encouraged me to do. It was always like go the college route, to get the degree, they were hoping I'd be a lawyer and a doctor and things like that. Found out pretty quickly that that was just not in the cards. I do have a degree in psychology though. So psychology is definitely, I always say like, if the bottom fell out and I couldn't do jewelry anymore, I would happily do psychology. But I took a gap year after I got my psychology degree. And I started working, I was always in restaurants. I was always in the service industry. I'm good. I'm like 23 or 24. I was like, I've got to stop this. I'll try something else. I went to a law firm. I was like, God, this is terrible. Dad, you need help in your store, right? Because I have to quit this job like right now. And I need a safety net. I need you to be my cushion. And so he brought me on for $10 an hour. I would do things like water his plants and vacuum and like just the absolute like bare basic things that needed to be done. I loved photography, so I would take his jewelry out and put it on, one of my like prettiest friends and I would take lifestyle photos for him and I was like, I'm gonna really like create you like a presence on social media. And then COVID happened and we were like, what are we going to do now? We didn't know if the jewelry store was going to make it. I mean, I think every small business owner had the same idea that we were all sort of like, now what? And in a world where we're not sure if we're all going to die, like who's buying jewelry? So we were all very, very, it's the end of times. And it was a great time for him to teach me to make jewelry because we just had like nothing else going on. And I got hooked pretty much immediately. And I found myself coming in on weekends, staying late. My dad could see that I was showing a lot of like dedication to the craft. And so he asked me if I wanted to go to GRS to learn engraving. I said, sure, I would love to do that. I definitely wanted to go. I had no idea what it would do. I did not know it was going to turn into the foundation of my business. I enthusiastically said, yeah, I want to learn to engrave. So I went to Kansas and liked it. When I got back, it was so difficult to implement it immediately because there's so many tools. And that's one big thing that I would urge someone like interested in picking up a new skill to do before they invest in like something like GRS. Is like, do I also have enough money to buy all of the equipment, the tools it takes to come home and like practice? Because I kept up with it as best as I could, but the setup that GRS had and the setup that I had were very, very different. And so I'm trying to engrave in a benchmate. And so you can imagine it just didn't work. I didn't start to be able to really practice until we slowly got all of the equipment. And a lot of things were on back order too. So anyway, all that's to say is it took a while. It wasn't like I went to my first class and just took off running. I did go to a second class with Sam Alfano, and that's when things clicked. and I started doing wedding bands. And my dad had like a little, he called them loaner bands. So people would come to the store who their engagement rings would need a repair, and he would say, well, do you want to take a loaner band? And he would give them, these were like, people would bring them into him and he'd like buy them for scrap material. And he would just have like a little thing of bands of different sizes. And if they happened to fit a customer, the customer was welcome to take them home and feel like they still had a ring on their finger while their ring was in the store. So those are the rings that I started engraving on. And I put one out there, and people seem to, really like it. I think it was the TikToks and Reels together started to get traction at the same time. And then the bands, like, it was, can you do my wedding band? And so I got some wedding band orders, but then I started getting engagement ring orders. And then it was all of a sudden, it was like, this is the foundation of a business.
Your business, in my opinion, is so unique and just so fun. I feel like there's a lightness, there's an artistic element. Your business is titled Artifex. Do you mind telling us like what does that mean? And also what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so Artifex means craftsman. Being the daughter of a bench jeweler, and my dad's kind of a purist, I wanted Artifex in the conception stage to be all handmade. And it's kind of evolved because, like I said, I went straight from wedding bands to engagement rings, and I didn't have the skill to like hand fabricate an engagement ring for someone. That's a very advanced skill. And so enter CAD CAM. And so I think Artifacts is more of like a pledge and an homage to my dad and pledge to myself to like keep the handcraft in the jewelry. I don't think it's realistic to run the business the way that I'm running it and at the volume that I'm doing. And at the price points that I'm doing right now to handcraft everything. So CAD-CAM, I think, is actually very appropriate. And as I've learned, CAD-CAM is a very, very difficult skill. So it's given me a big appreciation for CAD artists. Even though it's not handcraft, I do think it has a place in yeah, I guess you can't call it handcrafted jewelry, but I'm certainly hand engraving, we're certainly hand setting, and we're doing things artisanally. So even though it's evolved, I knew that I wanted to name it that so that I never wandered away from the core of craftsmanship and what that means. And I do make a point to learn more skills and incorporate more like niche skills into the artifacts pieces.
Yeah, yeah, they're beautiful. And you've sort of started turning away a few commissions now as you are developing your own line, which is really exciting. What kind of prompted that?
I think Burnout prompted that. Burnout prompted that. Um, I'm always kind of delicate around the subject. I sort of dance around the subject because I don't want people to get the wrong idea, which is, I think their first gut reaction when I say I don't want to take custom orders anymore. They sort of like, well, why don't you want to work with me? And it's not that, it's just, I think it's just having the freedom to explore and create. And I do find myself in a really good position where people come to me and they're asking for what I'm already doing. And so it's not that I'm taking no commissions. When it's a really good fit, it's an obvious yes. But it's when it's a little too far outside the realm of what I do. I mean, I don't want to bend to fit the mold of something else. Like I want to stay really true. And I wanna explore. There is this video of David Bowie. Do you know about this video? Every jeweler should see it. Any artist should see it. It's the video where David Bowie says never play to the gallery. And a friend of mine sent it to me, and it's basically David Bowie. And his point is that artists should never try to fulfill the wants and desires of other people. They should stay very true to themselves because it's this thing that like feeds our soul and drives us. And I think that when you start giving it away to someone else and trying to make it fit someone else's idea and their preferences, I think you lose yourself along the way. And it's not that I'll never do customs. It's just that I feel like I need a break so that I can kind of find myself again. But that video of David Bowie really kind of gave me the courage to just say like, hey, like I'm taking a break. And that's really tough. It's really scary because it was the foundation of my entire business. I didn't have a little nest egg. I didn't have investors. I didn't have people pouring in money into my business to get me off the ground. It was all custom orders. It was just grit and hard work. So to kind of pause that thing was a big risk. But it's not that I'm not making jewelry. I just wanted to make jewelry that I really loved. And I have a collection of rings now called the Liana ring. And it's very much form forward and a little less engraving forward. But Liana was actually, I had a potential client who was interested in working with me, and she showed me this antique ring. And the shank of this ring is very similar to the Liana ring that I'm now producing. And I really liked the idea. She ended up going in a different direction, and that's completely fine. However, there's something I love about like receiving a no and turning it into my own yes. And so all I needed to hear was like, no, thanks. Actually, I'm going to go a different direction. And I was like, great. I know for sure I'm going to do this. And so, now Liana is finished. I did finish the collection of 5 rings, and we're going to drop it eventually and see how it goes. But stopping customs, at least not doing them at the capacity I was doing them, is very much like a love letter to myself. It's giving myself a break and letting myself explore, create, and like have a little bit more fun.
So excited for you, because I think that that's when artists really start to find their voice. I've seen a little preview of the collection. I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited for you. I can tell that you made them, which is epic. Like, that's what I think is so special about your brand and what you've curated is I can see a ring and I know that you did it. Right? Like, you have a very particular aesthetic.
I love to hear that. And I don't know that, I think it's hard to convince myself of that because I feel like I'm all over the place. But I do hear it a lot that people will say that I would know one of your pieces immediately. And it's such a high compliment. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it also has to do with, you're pretty consistent in the metal that you use, yellow gold every time. Are you working in 14 or 18?
I work in both.
Okay.
I prefer 18 because it engraves a lot nicer, but 14 engraves well too. I mean, so it's just, yeah, but almost always yellow gold. I just like yellow gold.
Yeah, yeah, and it looks beautiful. But the other thing that you pair it with, and this is something that you and I were talking about the other day, is you're so specific in your aesthetic for stones. And you love these moody, like glowy stones. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Moody is a great word. So I do kind of feel that I've never really liked like the traditional thing I'm supposed to like. And I don't know if that comes from kind of feeling like a misfit when you're a little kid and like, I was like a little tomboy. I just never wanted to like do the girly thing. And so I never like a beautiful blue like sapphire like Princess Diana. That never drew me in. And like, the most beautiful, highest clarity emerald, I was just always sort of bored by that. But now if you give me a sapphire that's not the color it's supposed to be, and it's a little cloudy, but it's glowing, not sparkling, and it's not following the rules, I'm really interested. Yeah, I think that's why.
Can you talk about your first experience at an AGTA fair?
Yes. So my first AGTA was in Denver, and I was like way out of my league. I had no money to buy stones, and I didn't buy any stones because I'm telling you, I had no money. Artifex wasn't even a twinkle in my eye. I mean, it's tough to remember, but I really don't think I was working in gold yet. There's this feeling at a gem show when you kind of know you're not supposed to be there and you don't really have any money to buy anything. And you're like, God, I'm just wasting all these people's time. You know what I mean? So there are these 2 like hippie looking guys, Desmond and Greg, and Larry was there too. So it would have been 3. I didn't get to meet Larry at that time, but 3 hippie looking guys in their booth. But they had the most beautiful precision cut gemstones that I'd ever seen. And I was completely blown away. It was like everything else I had seen was like, it didn't measure up at all compared to what I was looking at. I was seeing specifically Marilani Mint garnets and Mahanga Malaya garnets, and they were cut. There's no window. There's no windows at all. And they were like disco balls. I thought they were moissanite. That's how beautifully they shone. And I was totally blown away. Right from the jump, I was turned into a gemstone snob. I was like, if it's traditional and commercial looking, I don't want it. Like, I didn't know garnet could be Marilyn Mint, a light green color. I didn't know they could be a blushy pink rose color. I didn't know they could be orange. So I think that's when I was like, you know what, I want the gemstone that you look at it and you don't know immediately what it is. You just know it's stunning and it's gorgeous, but I want you to wonder. I want there to be like mystery and intrigue.
That's a great way to put it. How would you describe the aesthetic of your brand at large?
I think it tiptoes between like a little feminine and a little masculine. It's very androgynous. I would like it to feel that way. That's purposeful. There's a lot of rings that I do. I work with a lot of LGBTQ couples. So there's a lot of androgyny in the work. And I find myself to be a little bit androgynous as well. Like, and it very much will depend on the day. But I like that middle area of like, no, it's not super feminine. It's not super masculine. It just sort of straddles right between the two. I think that's a very cool place to be.
Well, and I think that's really achievable in your approach because you have sometimes this really almost like brutalist cuts, these really bright, sharp cuts, and then this really like soft stone. Or you have
Right.
a really sharp stone and then this really like soft hand engraving, around
Right.
it and filigree. And I love that
Well, the
combination.
juxtaposition, I mean, I really like to juxtapose elements that seem like they don't belong. So, pairing masculine and feminine, and then also when I first started with Artifex, I was doing pearls. I was doing pearl jewelry and I was wrapping these curb chains around it because the curb chains gave it this like industrial working class feel, but the pearl has been this like symbol of high class. And so I was like sort of like pairing these elements together and sort of like, this is really interesting.
Can you talk about your creative process from concept to finished piece?
Yeah, it always starts with a gemstone. It's very gemstone forward. Very seldom is it the other way around. So it's not that I'll dream up a design and then find the stone for it. I really love the gem hunt. I love to the gem show and scouring through thousands of stones to find like that one. And then it's really easy. Not always easy, to be honest, but that is certainly the way I prefer to tackle it. Is like I'm firstly inspired by the stone, and then like, what does the stone want me to do with it? It's kind of let the stone do the talking. And that could go a few different ways. I'm big into rings, and I really like a ring because you can look at it all day long.
Do you mind touching on your feelings on earrings?
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, I hate earrings.
I find
I
this so funny.
hate an earring. No, I really don't. I don't prefer to make them, but when I first started, I would get an idea. I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna make earrings. And so I would get really into it and I'd make one earring and I'd be like, okay, now I've scratched the itch. And then I'd be like, oh, I don't want to make the other earring. So I learned pretty quickly to batch work it. So, okay, we're gonna do this stage now. So we'll do this together. That way I don't feel like I've gotten to the finish line. I can celebrate, have this beautiful piece of jewelry, and then I have to start all over again. But that is why you don't see a lot of earrings from me, is because I have to make two.
I think a lot of goldsmiths feel that way, but it was fun to hear you kind of voice it in your unique way. What would
Yeah.
you consider to be your greatest skill at this point in time in your career?
Well, definitely engraving. I'm not gonna call myself a master of engraving because there's so many kinds of engraving, but I feel that I'm starting to master bright cutting in specific. I've been doing a lot of Art Deco work, and every surface of that piece of jewelry is covered in this Art Deco pattern. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, this is very much my strong suit. So for sure, bright cut engraving. Now, I've dabbled in sculpting. I'm fairly good at it, but it's not something that I can see my jewelry. People I have this friend George, and he's like, why don't you sculpt? Why don't you do? I can't see myself wearing a sculpted ring. Every piece of jewelry that I make, I'm like, yeah, I'd wear that. That's like the goal. And if I feel like it's not quite there, I don't feel good about it. So I'm always like, any design before I finalize it, like, what do I like that enough that I would wear it? If so, then let's do it.
So you would definitely consider yourself your first client.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, yeah. When I started in silver, I didn't think they were gonna sell. So yeah, I always made for myself. I never made for anyone else. Just didn't. And honestly, when I first started making jewelry, I didn't know that I was gonna make it a career. I didn't know. I thought maybe I was just having fun.
Yeah. That's kind of the phase that I'm in right now. I'm just kind of like, I'm just making stuff. I'm figuring out what I like and don't like.
That's
Do
a
you
good
have
place.
any advice for someone who's in that camp?
Yeah. So you have to be your own best advocate. I mean, no, like if you don't love the piece, who's going to talk it up for you? Who's going to promote it for you if you don't love it? And it's so much easier to talk about your piece in an enthusiastic and an excited way when you actually do love it. So I think that it's really, really important to have that honesty in your work where you're not making something because you think it'll sell. Like, I can't imagine how it would feel to make rings and just have my end goal be to sell it, like, and I don't have to be in that position. Like I said, like when people contact me for customs, it's very much in line with what I'm already doing. I'm never really having to water anything down. But, like if I had to just make solitaire rings all day because I was too afraid to express myself and my only goal was to sell a piece, I don't think I'd keep doing it.
Yeah, that's fair. Is there a particular piece that comes to mind as like your favorite or a collection?
Olena is one of my favorite. Olena is like this big 5 carat brown cognac, beautiful, like force. Love that ring. So a friend of mine gave me a 5 carat cognac diamond and he gave it to me on open terms. He gave me nothing. He gave me no constraints. His name is Anoop Jogani. He's like a very large gemstone dealer, diamonds and colored stones, like just incredible stones. And he gave me a long time and I was really scared to do anything with it because, and this is what I'm talking about. I was like, this is expensive enough. It's gonna be risky for me to like approach it in an uninhibited way. I could play it safe and hope that this, and the stone was already unique to begin with. It was an old mine. It's an old mine and it's a little bit asymmetrical. So it's not going to call to everyone. So I'm like, well, am I going to now make it twice as hard because I have this sort of like niche stone and I'm going to put it in, I'm going to make a ring out of it that may only speak to just a few people, or I could try to increase my chances of making this sale and pull back. And I decided not to pull back. And I sold the ring. And that's that, like, just like be authentic, like what you make. And I think people will know when you like it. You know what I mean?
You're just naturally a really good storyteller. You've found a way to have that translate over into social media and the way that you've marketed yourself. Did you set out to market yourself in the way that you have, or did it happen organically?
No, it evolved. When Reels first came out, when Reels came out and I was trying to help my dad's social media, I was telling stories. I was taking pieces that really like wowed me out of his gallery. And these were just stock pieces, but some of the like, coolest, like most beautiful emeralds or most beautiful sapphires, and I would just kind of make a reel and talk about the lore of a sapphire. Then I was like, well, how do I do this for myself? I can't, it's not the same. I don't have the skills to make this kind of piece. This is so elegant. My skills at the time were more like, rudimentary and I should send you some of my silver work. They were like really interesting pieces, like all hand fabricated. But I was thinking to myself, like, well, if like maybe they may not like love my pieces, but maybe I can like make people like me just like for who I am. Maybe I'll just share myself with social media and maybe they'll like me and want to buy from me because I had heard that people buy from people they like. And that's true for me. When I meet someone and I really like them, I want to support them. So when I buy jewelry, it's because not only do I just like you, but I like your work. But the more I like you, the more I like your work too. So I took advantage of that early on. And I just had fun with it. It was really, really awkward in the beginning to try to get on social. I have some like old videos where I'm like, oh my God, you could tell I'm so like nervous, didn't want to be there type thing. And it was just really relaxed. And it was like, who cares? Like, let's just loosen up. Then some reels started to go viral. And I think I just kind of caught on to like what was, I kind of have like a feeling when I'm like, yeah, I think that's gonna perform well. Usually it's right. Sometimes it's wrong, but usually it's right.
That sort of approach gives the consumer more of a direct avenue to you versus like they're buying straight from you versus going through a third party. And side note, I found that like with this podcast, I have a limit of how many times I can edit the episode. I do one pass because if I listen to it twice, I get too self-conscious and I scrap it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when you go back and you like rehash old stuff that you've recorded, you just like there's this it's the getting over the fear part and just putting stuff out there, putting yourself out there, getting over the fear of, what will people think?
Nothing holds you back like the fear of what people think. And it's just such a, it can be so inhibiting. So getting over that sort of early on and getting over that before I was ready to make really marketable pieces like an engraved wedding band, it's a very marketable piece.
What are you most excited about? What's to come for you?
I'm most excited about working with like larger stones. Like I love stones. So I've worked with like a 6 carat cognac diamond. I've worked with a 5 carat cognac diamond now. I've worked with some big things. Not everything has been shown, and that's tough because it's tough to go backwards when you're like, this like big thing, and it's warping my brain a little bit. Like I kind of find myself being like, it needs to be bigger. So just bigger and bigger projects. This doesn't have to be a bigger stone. Like right now, I'm engraving a bangle. Would you call it a bangle? It's very much so maybe not a bangle, a bracelet. It hinges for a friend of mine, and she is so sweet. She has been waiting for this thing for 2 years. I just was so scared to start. And obviously, I wouldn't make anyone except for a very good friend of mine wait for 2 years. Very well worth it. I'm glad she did because now my skills are so much better. And it's I'd say I'm about 60% of the way done. It is looking so good. So just like bigger projects in that regard too. Like I feel like I'm ready to push the bill. I've done the engagement rings and I likely always will. But like what else? What else can we do? I just am searching for little sources of excitement. Other skills too. I love granulation. I went and did a 5-day course with Kent Ribley in Washington. Hand fabricated a ring, did granulation. I took to granulation really quickly because my silver work was already, I call it cowboy granulation. I was making shot out of wire. So I was just heating it up until it balled up. And I was placing it all around these like bezels. And I would do that, until I couldn't see them anymore. This was before I had a microscope. So just until I couldn't even tell it's just too small. So it just was already kind of doing granulation, already really loved it. Found Kent Ribley because someone, I think it was my dad's like bench jeweler, was like, that looks like granulation or something. I was like, granulation, what is that? So I found Kent Ribley that way. I was like, oh my gosh, he's a master. He's incredible. He's incredible. And he's such a great teacher too. But when I found him, again, I was like dirt poor. I mean, I just was like barely like getting by. Um, and I was fine with that because I was happy. I was really happy working in jewelry. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford that. You have to buy an ounce of gold. You have to buy the course. You have to buy a plane ticket. You have to buy an Airbnb. So I waited until my business started taking off. And I was like, you know what? Now's actually a good time. It was a bad time, actually, because I went to his course um, in August and I had moved to New York in June. So June, July, August. Came back like for 5 months as I was here, I felt like I was putting out a fire every day because that was such a big move. Everything was an emergency, like has to be done right now. So I wasn't able to and this was one of those things like I wish I had thought about what is it going to take to bring granulation to my studio. I didn't think about that. So I can't wait to do his course again, where maybe I can come back now that my schedule's a bit freed up and a little bit more caught up and I have the time to do some innovation. But granulation, I love granulation. And now I'm learning enamel, which I'm so excited about. I love like tiny meticulous processes. Anything like really meticulous, I'm really into that. That's why I like engraving.
You mentioned burnout.
Mm.
What advice would you give, because you were in the situation where you had built your business to a point where you had the opportunity and option to kind of say, okay, I'm going to put a pause on this right now. What advice would you give to someone who is in the middle of burnout but doesn't necessarily have that option?
To take a break.
Yeah.
Take a short break, like a really short break, take a like 3-day detox. It's the balance I think that causes the burnout. And I think it's just easy to get burnt out. It's easy for me, I started feeling my first burnout after I had stepped away from my dad's business because we were just butting heads. Like we're best friends, and also we're 50% of the time we're best friends. And honestly, we're best friends 70% of the time, but 30% of the time we are like butting heads, like just cannot agree on anything. And so that working environment, when my business started to gain traction, there ended up being some tension between the two of us. And um, I needed more freedom. It was coming up to that point where it was just the next natural progression was going to be a separation, but amicable and under the same roof because I still needed to work in his studio. But of course, with most things that I do, I jump the gun a little bit. And it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. But in this case, it was a good thing. There's this piece of advice I keep hearing is like, well, if you wait until you're ready, you'll probably never do much of anything. And so I'm a big proponent of like, just do it. So I just did it. I got off my dad's payroll and I was like, okay, now I'm supporting myself. So I loaded up on customs. I said yes to I had like 40 customs and was totally in the weeds and just like after hours. And I would stay in the studio till 2 a.m. That was like pretty normal. So I did it wrong. My entire existence became jewelry. There was not a lot of social. I wasn't seeing my friends very often. I wasn't really balancing my life. I wasn't going to like yoga, which I love to do. I wasn't like working out. And you have to have a healthy body to, I think, to have a healthy mind. And it takes so much mental energy from you to do what we do. It's really taxing to focus that long on the same thing. So let's just say it's just like I was headed for burnout because I stopped taking care of myself. And I just looking back, like there's a way to balance it better. And balancing is kind of a form of discipline. It's tough. You have to you get into this mode of like creation and I didn't want to go to yoga. I wanted more to work on my jewelry than I wanted to go to yoga. And so I stopped doing that thing and ultimately paid the price, but it just wasn't I had no balance. It was all jewelry all the time. You'd be surprised what 3 days or 5 days or just a whole solid week, how refreshed you might feel. You're not going to lose your whole business in a week. Like everyone will survive if they can't get in contact with you for a week.
When do you feel most creative?
After a break, after a big long break, after a gym show for sure. And after a class. So after I studied with Kent Ridley, my sketches looked so different, but I was sketching all the time.
Are there any collaborations or partnerships that have been particularly meaningful to you?
So the Jewels by Grace is my first collaboration piece where I got no input. They didn't want to dictate what I was doing. Grace gave me, I think it was a 1.6 carat old mine diamond. I really loved old mines. Probably forever will. There's just something so charming about them. They're asymmetrical. You can tell they were cut by hand. They aren't trying to be perfect. But so she gave me a stone that I just was really excited about. And a couple of people have done that for me. Like my friend Dawn, who is a sapphire miner, has done that for me too. And I think I expressed to him, I'm feeling a little bit like I'm like kind of stuck, just in like a little bit of a creative rut. I think he shipped me like 2 stones that he knew I liked and was like, just make whatever you want. Like don't overthink it. Just make whatever you want. And Grace did the same thing. So to this day, those are still some of my favorite pieces. And then Anoop Jogani did the same thing. He sent me this 5 carat old mine, gorgeous cushion. And like I said, that was different because I was like so scared to approach it. I was like, "Who? This is like this is a really big, this is a really big diamond. What if everyone hates it?" It's a real fear. We all, I think, wonder like, what if no one likes it?
Those are good friends, right? Those are good, especially when you can verbalize that you're in a bit of a creative rut and they think that they have something that would be encouraging to you. For them to ship those stones to you, that's really cool.
Yeah. No, I'm so lucky. Um, and it's just networking. It's just going to shows and meeting people. The jewelry industry is like full of really wonderful and generous people. So these kind of collaborations are absolutely not unheard of, but the the only thing you need between, you know, is trust. As long as someone knows that you're not going to take up with their stone, you're very likely that you can do some really great collaborations with some stone dealers that you make friends with.
Is there anyone in particular that you would nominate for me to interview on this podcast?
I think that Grace and Julia would be really, really cool to interview because Grace is just such like a badass. Like she's just so I look up to her so much. And Julia's like a gem. She's just a ray of sunshine. And I think that's their business model is a little bit different than most that you've interviewed. Is that, would you say so?
Yeah, yeah. So Jewels by Grace was one of the first jewelry Instagrams I ever followed. So obviously I know exactly who you're talking about, and I think that would be awesome. I would love to have them on. They're a
Yeah.
mother-daughter team,
Yeah.
and just a really wonderful curation of a phenomenal collection of jewelry.
Yeah, I think they could have so much to add to the conversation.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I haven't reached out to them yet, so I will after this podcast goes live. Is there any particular fun fact or thing about you that you would love your clients to know about you before they work with you?
I think I wear it all sort of on my sleeve. I definitely gravitate toward a client who, because it's very much like, it's almost like going on a date. Like a consultation to me feels like going on a date. It's like, is this a match for the two of us? Um, I want them to trust me. Trust is big. I just think I work better when someone says to me like, I totally trust you. I feel like I'm more likely to nail it. So I just think there's like a compatibility that's just the only thing I'm like look for, I guess, when I pair up with a client. So I feel like if you like look at my socials, you get everything you really need to know. I love natural stones. So I'm looking for people who love natural stones. But aside from that, no, I don't know. I think it's all pretty much out there. Don't you think?
What is your experience as a female bench jeweler?
Having gone through like schooling, like you go through GRS and you go to like New Approach, those places are great because I think it really levels the playing field. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you're advancing or you're falling behind. Like we're all getting humbled together. It gets, and I do think I'm shielded from a lot of things now that I have a private studio. When I worked with my dad, so like to make this more clear, I think the men have caught on, especially younger, and if you've gone to GRS, you kind of get it. I think there are some of the older generation who kind of have this like, what would you know about jewelry, little woman? And when those things happen, like I said, luckily I don't have a lot of these experiences. Like sort of secondhand, I've seen them. Like there's a big Facebook group, and you might get someone who says like who wants to undermine your knowledge, and you just kind of let it roll off your back. What else is there to do? You can only say like, I'm schooled and I've been to GIA and I've been to GRS and I can probably like engrave you under the table. That doesn't make me feel good, you know? So we certainly get these little comments. You might get these comments from an older generation. And there are some of the older generation who are lovely, but there are some who definitely kind of feel like, what are you doing in this man's field? And I think it's, just something that you have to let roll off your back. You're not going to change any minds. And I would rather just prove it with my work than with my words. And then, there is a perception with the public for some reason. When I was working with my dad, I would go out to greet customers and people would be like, can I speak to a jeweler? I'd be like, oh, okay. I'll put on my optimizer and come back out. How can I help you? It is what it is, It's there. It's there. There's definitely it certainly feels like you're a minority in an industry, but I think the tides are turning. I think they're turning because women know what women want to wear. So we certainly have an advantage. And it can be tough, but like I said, I fight through that just by like doing the best I can. I've always wanted to play with the boys, like as a little kid. It's been like, I'm gonna run the fastest, like faster than the boys. I've never really like I always thought that was so like silly, this like boys are stronger, boys are faster. I always wanted to sort of beat that. With jewelry too, like there are just some like areas that men seem to be dominating, I think largely because there's like a lineage. So if someone's dad, like it tended to go from like father to son for a long time. Not so much anymore, obviously, but like stone setting kind of feels like a boy's thing. And I'm like, ooh, I would love to infiltrate this. I would love to like, I'm always about that. I'm always trying to like I can do it too. Just watch. So it's not all that bad, but it's good for like, I find inspiration in it, I think, and motivation. When like, this is always my thing. When someone looks down on me, I'm like, just watch, fine. You don't believe it? Fine, I'll show you. You can take from that what you want.
Everything that you create, I think it's beautiful. I think you're making your own path and you're creating almost a niche market for yourself. Where can people find you? What are your socials for those who haven't come across your page yet?
Yeah, so I'm Artifex Fine on TikTok and Instagram, and artifexfine.com is my website.
And is there any way that those is there any way that people can support you?
Well, like words of encouragement are always amazing. Like I love to see a comment. I love to see comments that, I don't see all of them, but I do see a lot of them. That very much is a form of support, just as much as buying a piece is it's emotional support. So I love when people speak up, and if they feel moved by a piece, they let me know. The other thing has been happening lately, and this is just baffles me every time, is it's in New York, especially in some gem shows, but in New York, people have recognized me. And that when people speak up, that is like whole day made, because like, and I want to know about them just as much as they want to know about me. And it's that like, because sometimes you feel like when you're on social, at least sometimes I feel like I'm talking just to myself. You're like, is anyone really out there? Then like someone on the train, someone said, I would recognize you. I follow you on Instagram. I love your work. Like, thank you for saying that. That's so like, that really like, that's so special to have that interaction. It's just not anything I ever imagined for myself, that I would be making jewelry that people are recognizing or recognizing me for my jewelry. That's never something I saw. And yeah.
It's the coolest. I'm so excited for you. I'm excited to see what you do in the years to come, and I look forward to eventually meeting you, hopefully at a trade show coming up soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I think we said what, Tucson, maybe next year?
Probably Tucson next year.
Fingers crossed.
That was my interview with Kindred Lubeck. Kindred, thank you again so much for coming on. You are a force, and I just so respect and appreciate you. And I look forward to everything with genuine excitement and curiosity as to what you're going to do next. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.